Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Augusta University Writing Center and the Department of English and World Languages presentation on prepping for your English and World Languages scholarship applications. The EWL department offers several scholarships, and who doesn't want free money, right? So today, some of our past recipients and myself are going to share some tips with how you can prepare a strong application for the EWL scholarships. So on this screen and on our next slide, we're going to review the scholarships that are available for you to apply for. There are several scholarships and they each have slightly different requirements. So the first step that you can take if you're thinking about applying for one of our EWL scholarships is to read about each of the scholarships and see what types of students they're looking for. So on your screen, you see that one of the first scholarships listed is the Lily Butler Johnson Scholarship. This scholarship is for an English or World Languages major or a Women's and Gender Studies minor. You must have a minimum 3.0 overall GPA and a 3.5 GPA in your major. So that would mean a 3.5 in your English and World Languages or Women's and Gender Studies major or minor. They're looking for campus involvement. So if you're somebody who's really invested in the community, who does a lot of activities on campus, this might be a good scholarship to apply for. Like all of our other scholarships in the academic year for 2021, the scholarship is due on March 1st. So if you're watching this on the 22nd when we're making this presentation, that's only 1 week away. So we're going to share a lot of tips today that usually you would want to start working on a little bit earlier. But even if you only have this week, you can still do a lot of the things that we'll recommend and you can still put together a strong application. So the next scholarship on the list is the Jana Sandarg Scholarship. This is earmarked for study abroad to Salamanca, Spain. And a secondary option, if you're not going to Salamanca, is for another Pamplin-sponsored study abroad trip. So I think we are doing Salamanca this year, or we have in the past, so that may apply. But if you've gone on other study abroad trips, that may count as well. The next one is the Pamplin Talent Scholarship in Creative Writing. So as it sounds, this would be for somebody who is invested in creative writing. You must be an English major, you must have a minimum 2.5 GPA, and you must have demonstrated creative writing activity or participation at Augusta University. So this could be maybe being a member of Sandhills, it could mean that you're part of the Creative Writing Club, or it could just mean that you participated in other activities sponsored through the department or other units at AU that focus on creative writing. In addition to those, we have the Patricia Smith Lesher Scholarship. This means that you must have completed the composition sequence, which is 1101 and 1102, or 1113 and 1114 if you took it in the honors program. We also have the Chelsea Ann Collins Scholarship. You must be an English or World Language major, have a minimum GPA of a 3.0. We also have the Edith Wright Bailey Scholarship in English Education. So this is for our English secondary education majors. You must have completed the 2000 level education sequence by the end of spring 2021. And then finally, we have our Mary Lou Cool Scholarship, or sometimes it's called the Sandhills Writer Scholarship. For this scholarship, you must have demonstrated interest in creative writing. You must have demonstration of dedication, discipline, and cultural sensitivity. That's what that sensitivity means there. You must have completed the composition sequence. And you must be enrolled in or have completed at least one creative writing class at Augusta University. You must also have a 2.5 GPA. For this one, the recipient is determined by the creative writing faculty. And so they're really looking for people who respect cultural diversity and who really have a commitment to creative writing at AU and across our community. So now that you have seen some of our scholarships, you might be wondering, so what's required? What do I have to do to apply for these scholarships? I wish that there was one simple answer of just, do X, Y, and Z and you're finished. But you really do have to know what scholarships you're applying for and focus on each individual application. Most of them aren't too complicated. It's just a matter of getting all of the forms together and applying for each one that you're interested in. Most of the scholarships do require the completion of a form. And like I said, the forms are pretty short. Some of them also require a resume or a CV. Some of them require a letter of application. Some, like the Patricia Lesher Essay Scholarship, require a writing sample. And then most require at least one, but usually more. Usually it's 2 to 3 references from the EWL department. So how else do you prepare once you figure out which scholarships you're applying for and what they require? The first step is just making sure that you've filled out the forms and that you've done them thoroughly. The forms are short, but that doesn't mean that you should sell yourself short. You have plenty to say about yourself that will make you stand out. So really use the space that you have to the max. Really tell them everything you can about yourself that's going to make you look like the perfect fit for the scholarship. The second thing you can do is if it requires a resume or a CV, you can slightly tailor your document to the scholarship. I know this seems like a lot of work. Maybe you already have a resume or a CV and you'd like to just, toss it in with your application. But it's really important that your resume or your CV reflects the values of the scholarship. So for example, with the last scholarship, the Mary Lou Cool Scholarship, they're really looking for community involvement and cultural diversity activities. So if you have done those kinds of things on campus, it's important that you forefront them. If you're applying for one of the creative writing scholarships, they want to see, your creative writing works, your participation in those groups or clubs, and the classes that you've taken in creative writing. If it's a foreign language scholarship, like the study abroad one for Salamanca, they want to make sure that you've done that. So you would want to forefront that on your resume or CV. So whatever it is that the scholarship is focused on, you want to make sure that that's early on in your resume or CV and that it stands out. The next thing that you can do is prepare your letter of application. And I know that from my perspective, as the director of the Writing Center, I've seen a lot of scholarship applications that really don't mention need. Students will talk about why they're qualified for the scholarship, but they'll forget to tell people why they need it. Now, scholarship committees want to make sure that the funding goes to students who really do need it. So it's very important that you include both things in your letter. Why are you qualified for this scholarship, and why do you need it? I know sometimes it can feel a little bit embarrassing to admit financial need, but that's the expectation for scholarships. We're all applying because we could all use the money, so we might as well be explicit about why that is. Finally, if the scholarship involves a writing sample, you want to make sure that you pick something that reflects your best abilities. You want to make sure that you have revised it since you turned it in for a class maybe, or since you wrote it for another setting. And you want to make sure that if it was for a class, that you've incorporated any feedback you received on your final draft. It's highly likely that the people looking over the scholarship applications might be the same professors that you wrote the writing sample for in your class. And so they're going to look to see if you took the feedback that they gave you on the final version into account and have revised it since. For all of these kinds of documents, as you can see in blue, you want to make sure that you're not just doing this in a one-off draft. You want to put time into brainstorming. You want to spend time drafting. You want to make sure that you get at least some feedback, and then you want to revise before you submit. If you're looking for avenues to get feedback, the Writing Center is a great place to do that. We can actually help you with all of the steps. We can help you brainstorm. We can help you draft. We can definitely help you revise and polish, but also seek out feedback from peers in your program, maybe others who are applying for the same scholarships, or just peers that you've had in your classes who are familiar with the English and World Languages programming, and also talk to your professors. Your professors are resources for you. They want you to succeed and they want you to get this money. So don't hesitate to email them, maybe stop by their office hours or make an appointment to ask them to look over your materials. Most of them are happy to do that. So at this point, I'm going to turn the mic over to Sabrina Nachi, who is a recent graduate of the English and World Languages program in English literature, and who is also a past scholarship recipient. And she can tell you some tips from her perspective as a former recipient on how to be successful.
Hey everyone. Thank you, Dr. Bonds. So my name is Sabrina Nachi, and I'm a writing consultant at the Augusta University Writing Center, and also an English and World Languages Scholarship recipient. Last year, I received the Pamplin Talent Scholarship in Creative Writing, which kind of leads to my first tip. Apply for every scholarship because there's always a chance. My concentration wasn't in creative writing, and I didn't even take many classes, but I showed an interest in creative writing through my projects. And I also participated in the Sand Hills class. So if you meet the general requirements, definitely want to apply because there is always a chance. So definitely want to take advantage of the opportunity. And in general, you want to show off what sets you apart from other applicants. Some of your experiences may not seem relevant at first, but consider mentioning all of your professional experiences and also extracurricular activities. So some applications may require you to send in your resume or CV, and these are the documents that should clearly list all of your qualifications and experiences. And you also may need to ask for references from, like, say, a professor or an advisor. Ask a professor who knows you well as a student and writer. Consider asking them to maybe even review your work, but ask them as soon as possible. I know the deadline is coming up, so definitely ask. The sooner the better. They have busy schedules, so you want to give them enough time. And if the application does require a writing sample, choose something that really represents you as a writer. Depending on the application, you may be able to send in a creative piece or one from a class. A writing sample from an upper division course could work really well, but even if you earned a good grade, still revisit the paper and your instructor's feedback. There's always room for improvement, and you want to share your best work. If you could just, thank you. Okay, so, and again, each scholarship is different, so thoroughly review the details and descriptions of each one. Emphasize why you are a good representative for each specific scholarship and how you embody the same values they're looking for in a recipient. College is expensive, so how would this scholarship help you earn your degree? As Dr. Braun mentioned, you want to mention why you may need the scholarship. It may be a little bit awkward to talk about, but if you have to do things like take out loans or work an extra job or shifts to afford college, a scholarship can, of course, really help. So you may want to mention how earning a scholarship can help you financially and how it can let you focus on your degree. So, and you also want to talk about what your goals are. Why did you become an English major? You want to talk about those in your application and just kind of general goals and why you became an English major or added a minor. What are these degrees going to help you with in your future career? But lastly, just writing as a process. So revise, proofread, edit, and repeat. Don't send in your first draft. You want to clearly show you're qualified and why you should receive the scholarship. And of course, you can always make a writing center appointment, and we can help you take a look and get a second opinion.
All right, thank you, Sabrina. So unfortunately, our second recipient could not be here tonight. She is now a master's student in counseling, and she is attending class. But Bethany Stanley also recently graduated from the EWL program. She was an English major, and she sent in some tips as well. And some of these may sound familiar from repeating what I or Sabrina have already mentioned, but I think it's nice to hear Bethany's words since she's also been so successful. So she says that in her experience, a lot of these scholarships will ask for a sample of writing. Some will ask for more creative style pieces, and some will ask for more academic works. But that being said, here are some things that students should know going into the process. Her first tip is if it does require a writing sample, it's best to submit work that you have done for a previous course, whether that's an academic or a creative piece. Before you submit it, as Sabrina just emphasized, proofread it thoroughly. And as I mentioned earlier, maybe even do more than that and actually revise it a little bit on a larger scale. You can definitely make an appointment at the Writing Center to discuss your piece, as we've all mentioned. So hint, hint. Look for feedback from your professor. Have you made those changes? And then consider asking your professor to look it over and see what can be improved upon. So both Sabrina and Bethany mentioned this, and I think it is a really good tip. Bethany also mentions to start this process as early as possible. So maybe one thing you take away from this is that applying for scholarships is a bit of a lengthy process. I hope that you apply this year, but if you don't, now you have tips for next year and maybe start a few weeks earlier and you can create a really strong package. Also, these tips work for any scholarship, really. So if you go on to graduate school or other programs, these are still great tips to keep in mind wherever you're at in your academic or professional career. Bethany goes on to say that if the scholarship requires references, you will need to send emails to those people as soon as possible. Give them a minimum of 2 weeks. Now, again, we know you only have one. Still send those emails. We're pretty nice in the EWL department. At least I think most of us are. So if you're crunched for time, we understand and we'll do our best to help you out. Would we like the 2 weeks? We would, but 1 week, we can usually swing that when it's an emergency and we know that you all need money. So please don't hesitate to ask us. If the scholarship requires any type of personal statement or letter of application, as Sabrina mentioned, make sure you emphasize your future goals and plans. What do you want to do beyond your college or BA degree? As Sabrina and Bethany mentioned, this is so important because we want to give money to students who are really committed to career paths in English and world languages. So if you can share with us what your specific goals are, and if you can articulate how this scholarship money will help you get closer to those goals, we're much more inclined to want to give you the money. This last thing that she mentions is, why would this scholarship be beneficial to your college career or plan? And we've kind of already touched on that, but it never hurts to mention it again. We don't always know everything that's going on in your life when we're on a scholarship admission committee or application committee. We may know you a little bit, but it's very helpful if you can tell us more about the rationale behind why you chose English or world languages and how this money is going to help you achieve things that you really want to achieve. So as you can probably tell by now, there are many components to this application, and one of them might be a letter of application. And I thought it might be helpful to go over that a little bit more. The forms are really important, so are the CVs and writing samples, so don't ignore those. But business letters may be a genre that you haven't used as much before, and so we wanted to make sure that you know how to format that. So if you do have to include a letter of application, you will format that letter in business block style, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But business letters typically include 3 parts, and for this kind of scholarship activity, they'll probably be 1 to 2 pages, and if you can keep it to 1, that's probably better because you don't want to overwhelm the committee with a lot of reading. So try to keep it to 1 page, definitely don't exceed 2 pages. The first section of your letter will be your introduction, and in that introduction, you're going to include a salutation, like Dear Scholarship Committee. You'll then state your purpose and be very concrete and specific. You don't have to be fancy. So for example, I am applying for the Patricia Lesher Essay Scholarship. That's a statement of purpose, and it can be short and sweet just like that. You're then going to include a kind of thesis statement at the end of the intro. So this letter is persuasive. It's meant to persuade the committee that you deserve this scholarship. So we need to know why. So the thesis is where you state your qualifications as well as your need. So it's like a 2-part thesis. The body of your letter will then develop those 2 arguments. 1, why you're qualified, and 2, why you need the money. This could be done in 1 body paragraph, or it might be 2. It really just depends on how many qualifications you decide to focus on and how extensive your need is. After you've completed the body, you'll include a very short conclusion paragraph. You're going to restate the thesis in new words, so restate your qualifications and your need. You should always thank the committee for their time and their consideration. Give them a way to follow up with you, so whether that's an email like I have here or a phone number, whatever the preferable way for them to contact you is, make sure that you tell them. And then include a professional closing, so something like sincerely or respectfully or thank you. And then you want to either hand sign or digitally sign your letter. So hand sign and scan, and if at all possible, it just looks more personal to have the signature. Or if you're going to do it digitally, try to do something like Adobe Professional, where you can actually have the timestamp with your signature so that it looks official. To demonstrate what this looks like, I know that you probably see this somewhat smaller in scale, but you can see the blocks. So block business style is called block style because everything is organized into separate blocks. The blocks are single spaced, and then there's a double space in between each block or section. So in this version of a cover letter, it's not necessarily an application letter, but you still get the formatting idea. We start with the sender's address block. So that's where you have your address. And then you're going to skip an extra line, and then you'll have the date block. Then you'll skip a line, and then you'll have the recipient information. So for your purposes, the recipient information will be the English and World Languages Department. It will be the Scholarship Committee. And if you want to include the EWL address, it is available on their webpage, and you can include it if you want. The salutation is the next block. It is on its own line. And then you can see that the intro follows that. This letter only has 2 paragraphs, but for you, you'll have at least 3. You'll have an intro that's single-spaced, you'll have a body paragraph that's single-spaced, and then you'll have a conclusion, and each of those will be its own single-space block with the extra line in between. The closing is its own block, and then finally the typed name at the bottom is its own block. And here they've chosen to include some additional contact details beneath the typed name. If you already have your contact information in the sender block at the top, you don't need it in both places, so choose one or the other. This is actually, I would call it a weakness of this example because they really only need one or the other. That space that's in between the closing and the typed sender name at the bottom is where you can hand sign or digitally sign your letter. Usually there's 3 lines between the closing and the typed last name, and that gives you the perfect amount of space to sign. So normally we would open it up to questions at this point, but since you're not here with us today, we do want to share the scholarship link with you. At the bottom there, you can see how to get to the EWL scholarships and their descriptions. It's also where you can learn how to submit your scholarship applications. If you have any further questions at any time, you can email the EWL department, or you can also contact the Writing Center at any point, and we can help point you in the right direction. If you'd like to make an appointment at the Writing Center, you can type Writing Center into the Augusta University search box, and we will be the first link that pops up, and we would love to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that you are all successful in your scholarship applications.